submitters.
Sorry, Phil.
It's okay. A 10-minute opportunity to speak to their submission. They don't need to restate what's already been written, and then we'll see if there's any questions that we have of you.
Okay.
So does that all make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're over to you. We're all ears.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for arranging this special submission opportunity. I focused out initially, much appreciated. As you know, my name's Aaron. Just briefly, my background, I've got a degree in architecture, and I worked for a few years as for architecture firms before leaving that to do some property development, fairly minor property development, I should say. And there's a few years of that. Most recently, I've actually been running the community radio station in Hamilton, in Raglan. So I run the station and I do interviews in the morning of people in Raglan about what's happening in Raglan. So I spend a lot of time on Raglan issues, talking about the various problems and the things that are going well. My reason for a major reason for making this submission, it was triggered, as a lot of people were triggered by the 11-unit development on the corner of Wainui Road and Stewart Street. And can I show some photos now?
Yeah. Yes, we can share are they the ones that you've circulated last week or some different ones?
Yeah, the same ones.
Sandra will...
I can share my screen and just do it.
Sandra, if you could give Mr. Moore the opportunity to share the screen, he can put the ones up that he wants us to refer to.
Sure. There you go, Aaron.
So this is the, how do I make that go to sleep?
We have been made aware of these before, by the way, and we have seen renderings that look, if not identical to that, I think they are the same ones.
Yeah, that'll be the same one. What I've got here is some photos I took around, I went around and took some photos at dusk. What I wanted to say about this building is just its huge visibility. So that's the view from the museum and the eyesight where all the tourists go. That's a view from the CBD outside Raglan's famous surf shop, Surf Co. This is on the road where the art centre is. This is the view from the main road coming into town. You can see it there. And bearing in mind that that's 4 units of 11, so you're only seeing it at an early stage. That's the view from where everyone goes to the beach across the water. So it's incredibly visible. And given that it breaks quite a few of the rules and the council used discretion, and given that the town didn't know anything about it, this was the thing that the town didn't know anything about it and was caught by surprise. We found out that it was a done deal. So the community is particularly upset about that. I guess to use local words, it's got a Mount Maunganui vibe about it. And if this was just a one-off thing, this wouldn't be such an issue. But we had a situation a few years ago where council planning department came to town with their plan for a redevelopment of the CBD, and that was widely interpreted as being an attempt to make the town more like Mount Maunganui again. And it seemed to be out of touch with what the community wanted. So in fact, the community reacted quite violently, somewhat unnecessarily in some cases, I felt, but it kind of showed the strength of feeling about it. So I feel like this is kind of happening. Like I'm not intending to criticise council planners so much as just say that for people who don't have much to do with Raglan, they're kind of missing what the feeling is here. And so a lot of the drive that's come into the district plan from this is really a desire for local say and local control over what's happening. I'm not too sure what you can put into a district plan to actually make that happen, whether you can refer back to some local institution, for instance, Raglan Naturally. I know that you've talked about Raglan Naturally with Gabrielle, who is running Raglan Naturally. I just want to just quickly touch on that. Just to give you an idea of the status of that document in the community, it is universal in a town that's very diverse and has very differing opinions. It's the one thing that people will agree on. You can be having a discussion about town issues. Someone says, "Oh, well, in Raglan Naturally it says this," then that pretty much ends the discussion. So it's a very important document to Raglan, that one. So anyway, The other photos I've included, it's just a quick run through of Cliff Street, which is running along the water there. And really all I'm showing is just the diversity of houses. Raglan kind of developed slowly and in a piecemeal way over the years. And again, I apologize, some of these photos were taken at dusk, so they're not very good.
That's okay.
But, I'm just showing the diversity, individual expression, and really the human scale of what's happening here in Raglan. And this is, I think, the diversity and human scale is what people are looking at retaining. Now, I'm not someone who wants to set Raglan in stone and leave it as it is, like a quaint seaside village, ready to be gentrified. That's not what I'm suggesting. I want to see the character retained by a set of rules that are enabling, prescriptive rather than descriptive, which is why I put a housing guide from Housing New Zealand in as an example of how that might work. I'm really not in favour of rules that say in the centre of town we have roof pitches of this many degrees and building heights of this much, and really prescriptive stuff. I think for part of Raglan's charm is the diversity and the chance for individual expression, both within the people and with the built environment. And so I'm trying to drive at something like that. This is a new building, which a lot of people won't like, but as long as the whole of Cliff Street can turn up like that, I think the town will still retain its character. So that's what I'm driving at. I'll stop sharing that screen now. But the other issue we've got is a growing housing crisis, and we made the submissions about 2 years ago, I think, and it was already a bit of a worry now, but it's a far greater worry. And I know you've heard from Fiona from Affordable Housing Project.
Yes.
And I totally support what they're trying to do. And one of the things that they've said is that I think the housing market now only serves 25% of the population, the top 25% of income earners. So we are really in trouble here, especially in terms of finding workers to come and serve all the people who are coming here on holiday. But also there's the Rangatahi development, and that's going to bring a lot of people to town, again, with nowhere for the people who are going to work to serve that community, nowhere for them to live. So I'm suggesting something from the Tourism Industry Authority about future housing developments have an allowance for worker housing somewhere in the mix. And I'm also kind of suggesting generally for the district plan, because we're in this crisis and we're only at the start of it and we don't really know how we're going to get out of it. There's talks about tiny homes and various things like that. That the district plan somehow needs to be really flexible in the future. I'm not really providing any specific ideas, I know, but we don't actually know what the solutions are going to be in the next 10 or 20 years to this problem. And how you draft a district plan to cope with that, I don't know. It's just a point I want to make to all of you, that we're going to need to be light on our feet in the future, basically. And just an idea of what's happening with the rental market. I saw the video of the other submitters the other week. There was talk about maybe our Airbnb problem is going to go into decline with the results of the pandemic. But talking to the rental agents the last few weeks, they say they've actually had as much interest as they've ever had in Raglan. So the immediate look at that situation is it's not going to change. So I know this is kind of contradictory. We want to preserve Raglan. At the same time, we've got to provide housing for the poorer side of the community and the people who do the work in the cafes and providing all the services. So again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not trying to preserve it in a museum, quaint village kind of way. I want to allow for it to grow, but still retain its character. So that's basically what I have to say.
Well, that's very helpful. Can I just say what I perhaps could have said at the start, but it's probably more appropriate to say it now anyway, is that at the conclusion of the hearing that you weren't able to attend,
yeah,
we set out some thoughts about the way forward, and in particular in relation to how the district plan should recognise the character of Raglan, which essentially is the topic that you've been speaking about.
Yeah.
The council report for the hearing included a character assessment that was undertaken by a chap called Gavin Lister from the Isthmus Group. Sorry, not Gavin List. I tell a lie. Sorry, I'm getting the wrong guy. Right company, wrong person. By Brad Coombs from Business Group, who essentially said that Raglan had special character and that the proposed plan as notified didn't adequately address it. And we sent a note to the parties from the hearing to the effect of saying, that created a problem for us insofar as the plan provisions that were provided to us were prepared on one set of assumptions, but the council's own specialist said he didn't agree with what they had concluded and that the plan needed amendment. So what we're proposing to do, and we'll specifically include you in that process, is that the parties that have been involved in this aspect of the hearing will be given the opportunity to work with the council to develop a methodology for considering how the plan might better recognise the special character of the urban areas of Raglan. Yeah. We'd formed the view, and we remain of the view, that trying to do something that addresses the coastal areas and the rural areas is something that we can't really accommodate time-wise within the time that's available to us. And that it should focus on where the development pressure really is, which is in the town itself. And you'll get a note to that effect that's basically ready to go out. So you'll either get it this evening or otherwise in the morning. So that we're going to invite further consideration of those aspects.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Some of the people that you sent those out to are people I interview regularly. So
I figured that might well be the case.
Yeah, so I'm aware of that situation.
We did give some thought, and just again to round the conversation off, we did give some thought of saying, well, maybe the whole thing should start from scratch and have a fresh look, from the ground up. And the problem with that is that our ability to actually tell the council what to do is limited. Our job's to sit on the hearings panel and make decisions on the council's behalf, but we can't commit them to, doing another plan change or any of those sorts of things. So we had formed the view that within the time that's available to us, we should make the opportunity available for the submitters that have expressed an interest in this issue and the council to work together to come back to us with some more refined thinking on what the plan might look like. And I think it's fair to say that most people at the moment are in the same boat as you, and that they've got more questions than answers. But they all have a sort of a shared vision, even if those shared visions are a bit fuzzy and a bit unclear. And then how they might best be incorporated into the plan remains to be worked through with everybody. So that's where we have got to. And as I say, you'll get that piece of paper, if not tonight, then in the morning. But we have specifically acknowledged your submission in the version of that that's coming out, and you'll be given the opportunity to be involved in that to the extent that you want to be.
Okay, thank you.
And we've focused the issue on the urban area rather than the wider area, and because that's where essentially the character issues lie, particularly the town centre. And there's other provisions in the plan that deal with the wider area, like the coastal area and the rural area. You've got landscape, significant vegetation and things like that, which have their own set of rules.
Can I ask a question to that? We've just got this rangatahi development that's happening. So if we had a town character plan or zone or area, whatever you want to call it, would that apply to any new land that's currently farmland becomes incorporated into the town?
No, well, that's already zoned for urban purposes, so that's part of the urban area as far as the plan's concerned. We're talking about greenfields, rural land that's Farmer Brown's paddock or whatever.
Yeah, I'm probably referring to the 2070 plan that's just come out.
Well, we're not being all that prescriptive around any of that. We're not focused on 2070. That's not part of the district plan. The district plan's got a life of 10 years nominally. And we've said, let's focus on the area of Raglan that's under immediate development pressure so that the character of the town is recognised appropriately and the development of that within the lifetime of this plan is managed as best as it can be. So we're not looking 2070 at the moment. We're looking, 2020, 2030 and a little bit beyond probably. Bearing in mind that those other issues aren't irrelevant, we're not saying that, but it's not within our terms of reference to provide a particular focus on at the moment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess my concern was just that does the area that we're talking about grow as the town grows, I guess.
Well, that's what you guys are going to have to figure out. But we're not. What we have said is that we're not looking at taking a whole of Raglan approach. Extending all the way up the state highway for 15 kilometres, because at some point in the future someone might want to do something way out there. But exactly how you deal with this is a matter for the group to think about a little bit more. But we are particularly interested in, as Mr. Cooney has said, in those existing areas where there's immediate development pressure.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Let's just see if there's any questions of you, Mr. Moore. I don't think I have anything more, Mr. Cooney.
No, I haven't got. No, thank you.
Ms. Sedgwick?
No, thank you. But thank you very much for making the time, Mr. Moore.
And Ms. Te Aho?
Just a comment, really, Mr. Moore. So you've made it really clear that you recognise that there's a housing crisis, that you want Raglan to grow, but you're looking for ways, or you think that the council should find ways that prescribe ways to retain the character. One of the things a common theme that came out of the hearing from the submitters was they wanted to retain the character, but no one could really articulate what that character is. So you've used words today, quaint and enabling individuality. So what would be helpful for me would be recommendations or suggestions as to how that diversity and individuality can be provided for within the resource management mechanisms. So, it's to come up with some proactive suggestions rather than just these kind of vague statements about wanting to retain character, because what you might describe the character of Raglan to be might be quite different from what somebody else might describe the character of Raglan to be, and it's really difficult for the panel to be able to land on something if the people in the town can't land on something. So I think that would be really helpful for us going forward. Yeah.
Can I respond to that? First of all, the word quaint, I was using that in a slightly derogatory way. I don't want to think of Raglan as this quaint place that we try to preserve exactly how it is now. I did include in my submission, it was from Housing New Zealand, and it was about how to design communities and buildings in a way that was enabling rather than like forcing it down people's throat. I guess that's the colloquial way of putting it. So I'm not a planner, so I don't know if that can be put into a planning document, but it's a strong idea of how to allow community to develop while still retaining things like we're talking about individual expression and diversity and that sort of thing.
Well, I think the point that Ms. Te Aho has made is sort of throwing down the challenge not just to you, but the group that are going to take this away.
Yeah.
Spending 3 or 4 months saying, we had a little problem to solve and we haven't solved the problem, but we've got 150,000 more questions, makes it a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I understand. And Raglan does have a problem with everyone out here. We love what we've got. It's a question I ask a lot of people I interview. So what is that thing that we love? How do you describe it? So I'm aware that that's an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't, in planning terms, you can't capture everything. yeah, on one hand you want to be enabling, and then the other hand you want to retain the character or maintain the character, and obviously there's a bit of a tension there between the two. So, yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you wish to raise with us at the moment?
No, I think that's all. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for making the time available, and no doubt we'll see you again as the process itself unfolds some more.
Okay, and thank you for this extra session that you put on for me. Much appreciated.
That's our pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Moore. Whew.
I see we're still recording.